This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
What is Cafe Mocha? Cafe Mocha is experts, celebrities.
What's up? This is Belle Biv DeVoe.
Yours truly, Idris Elba.
This is Fantasia.
This is In Vogue.
This is India Ari.
So much more. All from a woman's perspective.
What flavor are you, baby?
This is Cafe Mocha.
Cafe Mocha with Lonnie Love, Yo-Yo, and Angelique. Voting day is Tuesday, and we're spending the show reminding you of your choices. We've got our girl from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, Roland Martin, White House correspondent April D. Ryan, and we're going to wrap the show up with some powerful thoughts by Michelle Obama. On the line, LaTosha Brown is a co-founder of Black Voters Matter. She's all about boosting voter registration and turnout in the Black community. It's a grassroots experience where they're just pounding the pavement, trying to get people registered and understanding what's going out there for the 2024 election. LaTosha, welcome back to Cafe Mocha.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
One of the things that I am really concerned about is that voting laws have changed since we voted in 2020. I feel like people are going to be caught off guard when they show up. Can you talk a little bit about kind of this movement to change voting and how we vote?
Yes, we've been working on this for years, but I think it's been accelerated. There's a couple of things that happened in Georgia that I can share, but one of the goals, I think, in every election cycle, what we come up against is voter suppression. And what does that mean? That's when there are things that have been put in place to actually try to suppress the vote, to keep people from voting, to discourage people from voting, or even to dismiss their ability to vote, or literally even to disrupt the process. And so we've been seeing that all across the country. In over 15 states, there have been laws that have been passed to actually try to make voting harder, that it becomes an additional barrier for voting. And so another piece, I think that there's what we've also seen is people having access to the ballot. When you're saying like just voter registration, in some places, not only has it become you have that issue in terms of you having to register to vote. In some places, it's a different hurdle than other places, where some places you have same-day registration. The majority of the places, particularly in the states in the South, there's a large, arduous process. Even in places like Alabama, where you're talking about even absentee ballot voting, that if people who are registered voters who have been voting with assistance, like my aunt, who's 90 years old, that now she can't have someone to help her in terms of cast her vote, or they can possibly go to jail and be fined around that. And so what you're seeing is this barrage of laws that are coming at an impact that try to discourage people from voting. You also see in states like Georgia and Virginia where there's been massive purges of folks, in different states across the nation, where they're actually purging registered voters, saying, you haven't voted in this election cycle or these 2 consecutive election cycles. So in fact, what we're going to do is we're just going to drop you from the voting rolls. And so there may be people who have registered or people who are eligible to vote and have voted before, but show up on election day and realize that they're not in the system. So I think it's really important for people to do a number of things. The first thing for people to do is to go to the website, vote.org. If they can go to vote.org, they can actually check and make sure that their registration is that they're up to speed in terms of registration. They can find out information about voting. They can find out information around what it is, just where they go to vote. So I'm just going to encourage people. And if they're not registered, they can register right there online on vote.org, vote.org.
I just wanted for you to repeat that people who are registered to vote are getting kicked off because they haven't shown up to vote lately?
I think there's a couple of things. One, I think that there are people who are being kicked off under the guise of saying that they have not voted in a while in one election or two elections. And so that, and some of those states have passed that. The second thing is, there are in some places, like we've seen in Georgia, people who have voted consistently. Matter of fact, in the last election cycle, Dr. Martin Luther King's cousin, who was actually in her mid-80s, had never missed an election, she found out prior to the election that she had been kicked off. And so oftentimes those lists are not even accurate, which is why we've challenged, like Voters Matter have challenged those laws and actually sued the states to actually say to stop that practice, but that practice continues, and in many other states they've adopted that. So one, yes, there has been a strategy. We believe that there's been a part of the strategy to actually to shift the roles by kicking people off under the guise of, they haven't voted these last two election cycles. We've seen hundreds of thousands of voters in Georgia alone be kicked off the voting rolls because, quote, one, they may not have had the right address, or two, they had not voted in previous elections in the last two previous elections. And so it's always what I call it's like death by 1,000 cuts, that there's some way that if you start shaving off 100,000 voters here, 200,000 here, 100,000 here, then you can get the kind of outcome you want. So that's why we want people to know that voter suppression is real and it's targeted at our communities, and it comes in a variety of ways. So it's not just one way. One of the pieces that we've seen just recently in Georgia, in the last month, there have been two rule changes in Georgia around credentialing, around certification, that after the election, right, when the votes are cast, they've created another process to be able to certify whether the election results are legitimate or not. In addition to that, there's been another rule that people can actually challenge whether that you can have election board officials to actually challenge whether they believe that the race is ready to be certified or not, for just basically for random reasons. So all of these things are literally like death by 1,000 cuts. If we can't win it one way, what we will do is we will find ways to cheat. We will find ways to undermine the process. We will find ways to disenfranchise voters. That's why it is important that everybody that's listening to my voice, the first thing that you need to do is to check your status, to find out if you are registered, to make sure that if you're not registered, that you re-register or that you register for the first time. Get out, like my grandmother used to say, get your stuff in order. That it is really important, because this isn't just about participation, y'all. This is about power. This is about who has the power to impact the policy and shift the policy that is impacting their lives and their family lives.
Cafe Mocha getting you ready to vote on Tuesday. And one thing that needs to be on everybody's mind is how Trump and the Republicans plan to rip away human rights with Project 2025.
Standing in solidarity from a woman's perspective. It's Cafe Mocha.
It's Cafe Mocha Election Edition. This is the last weekend before we vote on Tuesday. And First Lady Michelle Obama joined VP Kamala Harris at a rally in Michigan. She's asking men to think about women's rights.
So to the men who love us, let me just try to paint a picture of what it will feel like if America, the wealthiest nation on earth, keeps revoking basic care from its women, and how it will affect every single woman in your life. Your girlfriend could be the one in legal jeopardy if she needs a pill from out of state or overseas, or if she has to travel across state lines because the local clinic closed up. Your wife or mother could be the ones at higher risk of dying from undiagnosed cervical cancer because they have no access to regular gynecological care. Your daughter could be the one too terrified to call the doctor if she's bleeding during an unexpected pregnancy. Your niece could be the one miscarrying in her bathtub after the hospital turned her away. And this will not just affect women. It will affect you and your sons. The devastating consequences of teen pregnancy won't just be borne by young girls, but also by the young men who are the fathers. They too will have their dreams of going to college. Their entire future is totally upended by an unwanted pregnancy. If you and your partner are expecting a child, you will be right by her side at the checkups, terrified if her blood pressure is too high, or if there's an issue with the placenta, or if the ultrasound shows that the embryo was implanted in the wrong place, and the doctors aren't sure that they can intervene to keep the woman you love safe. If your wife is shivering and bleeding on the operating room table during a routine delivery gone bad, her pressure dropping as she loses more and more blood, or some unforeseen infection spreads and her doctors aren't sure if they can act, you will be the one praying that it's not too late. You will be the one pleading for somebody, anybody, to do something. And then there is the tragic but very real possibility that in the worst case scenario, you just might be the one holding flowers at the funeral. You might be the one left to raise your children alone. See, these are just some of the ways women die during childbirth. And I don't want to be a downer, y'all. But in many cases, there is no warning and things go bad very quickly. And when it happens, every second of hesitation or delay can lead to devastating outcomes. So I am asking y'all from the core of my being to take our lives seriously. Please, do not put our lives in the hands of politicians, mostly men, who have no clue or do not care about what we as women are going through.
It's the election edition of Cafe Mocha, and Roland Martin always has plenty on his mind.
Let's talk about the overall summary of the 2024 election. We had this big fundraiser in New York with Obama and Clinton and Biden. Were you part of that? Because you just come up anywhere.
He had 3 decades of leaders. What was it? 25 million?
Yeah, I think they raised like 25.
Yeah, no, I didn't go to New York for it. I'm like, people would hit me. I'm like, no, y'all can have all the fun y'all want to. I said, I'm good. I popped into enough fundraisers. I got enough stuff that I got to cover anyway. But listen, I mean, look, when you're running campaigns, look, you need cash. The reality is, this is probably going to be a $2 billion presidential campaign. You got to remember, 2022, when we talk about 2022 midterm elections, so you had U.S. Senate races, congressional races, you had gubernatorial, you had state races, and then you go all the way down to, counties, cities, school district, on and on and on. $9 billion was spent on the 2022 midterm election. $9 billion. Presidential election this year, I would not be surprised if that number is anywhere from 11 to 15 billion dollars. That's how much money will be spent when it comes to these elections. And so what I need our folks to understand is we've got to learn to connect the dots. There are people out there, people listening right now who are going, man, I'm not motivated. I don't feel like it. I don't like Biden. I don't like Trump. Man, I don't care. Well, guess what? One of them is going to win, whether you like it or not. So now the question then becomes, what are the things that you actually care about? So, for instance, when Senator Tim Scott is going around lying about how Donald Trump funded HBCUs more than any other president, that's an absolute lie. The data is the data. And you ain't never hear him give the numbers, but they spread the lie. They were talking to me, they were blaming Biden for high cost of rent and the housing crisis. I said, well, actually, you're wrong. They were like, what do you mean I'm wrong? I said, we had a home foreclosure crisis in 2008, 2009, 2010. So what happened was we had fewer homes that were built between 2010, 2020, fewer homes built in that decade since the 1940s. We're now in the 2020 to 2030. In the first 4 years, fewer homes have been built. So we're falling further behind. So you have more people, higher demand. Then you have private equity that bought up a lot of those toxic assets. By 2030, private equity is going to own some 40% of the homes. Hell, they don't want to sell them. They want to keep making money off the rent. So the problem with housing is we have a lack of housing because we did not build the number of units. We built normally between 9 and 12 million new units every decade. Well, if you only build 5, and you normally build 12, you're negative 7 million.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at this point right now where you should, like right now, we're at a negative 7 million homes this decade. So that's why we have a housing crisis. And so I tell people, what do you care about? If you say, I care about education, I care about health care, I care about public safety, okay, where do the candidates running for president, U.S. Senate, Congress, gubernatorial and state, where do they stand on those issues? And here's what's crazy. If you look at Texas alone, there are 2.9 million eligible black voters alone. And this is going to blow y'all away. 61% of Texas is minority. 61% of the people who vote are white.
What?
61% of Texas is minority. Latino, black, Asian, people club minority. But 61% of the people who vote are white. Remember Ferguson?
Yes.
Ferguson was 67% black. They never had a black mayor. They had a majority white council. There are multiple examples of that where listen, Louisiana, right? You had a black guy running for governor of Louisiana. You had a MAGA guy on the Republican side. So few of us voted, and whites as well, that the Republican, he won the primary, and now they upended everything. And I always tell people, don't get mad after the fact. Like right now, if you're a woman and you're mad about reproductive rights and the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and if you're mad about the affirmative action decision, if you're mad that the Supreme Court told Colorado they couldn't kick Trump off the ballot, well, guess what? What you do in 2016? If you were mad at Hillary in 2016 and you didn't vote, well, guess what? That's how Trump won. Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. We got to connect the dots. So you being mad at, and see, understand, the president is only there maximum 8 years. A Supreme Court justice could be there for 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
I had somebody tell me, Roland, you keep talking about these judges that Biden appointed. Man, that don't mean nothing. I said, really?
Right.
When they had those black kids in Angola prison in Louisiana under horrible conditions, a federal judge said, remove those kids in a week. It was an Obama-appointed federal judge. When you see these rulings, when you saw, in Tennessee, when they ruled that the Minority Business Development Agency must include white folks, guess what? They changed this 8A program. That was a Republican-appointed judge. When they ruled in Texas, they got to serve white folks in MBDA. That was a Republican-appointed judge. See, people need to understand that, okay, who appoints federal judges? President. Who approves federal judges? Senate. So if you don't vote for the presidential race and the Senate race, then guess what? You don't have any impact on who gets named federal judges. And those federal judges get to rule on all sorts of stuff. See, it's all connected. People have got to get smart about politics and not sit out. If black people, if we voted at 70% of our capacity, what I mean by that is, if 70% of eligible black voters in every city voted, we can sweep elections because we know how Latinos are going to vote, how whites are going to vote. We know what the turnout is. It's all about turnout. So when we purposely sit at home because we pissed off about something, or, man, I ain't seen nothing change. Well, it's guaranteed not to change if you sit out. If we actually set our target at hitting 70% capacity, we could literally sweep races in North Carolina, sweep races in Georgia, sweep races in South Carolina. The numbers are there. Problem is, we're not fully engaged. We're not fully informed. And people are just so mad and despondent. And I get it. I get the frustration. I get why you're upset. I get why you wish things had moved faster. But here's what I do know. It's guaranteed never to change if you sit out. You cannot complain about the policies and you don't change the politicians.
If you need more information about the issues, please go to Roland Martin's YouTube page. He's on every night. In fact, he just had President Obama speak at his men's group. Speaking of the Obamas, we have the former First Lady coming up.
We're at Cafe Mocha Radio. Socially savvy on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Serving up more Cafe Mocha on the way.
What up, music lovers? It's Claude Kelly.
What's up? It's Chuck Harmony.
And besides being two of the co-hosts of We Sound Crazy, we are also
Louis York, your favorite two-man band.
And the exciting news is we have a new album
streaming on all platforms. It's called Songs with Friends, and it features some of the best voices in the business.
Oh yes, I'm talking about Tamia,
Jessie J,
Layla Hathaway,
PJ Morton,
Gramps Morgan,
the Shindellas,
and so many more. Check out
Songs with Friends.
Standing in solidarity from a woman's perspective. It's Cafe Mocha.
This is Cafe Mocha with Lonnie Love, Yo-Yo, and Angelique. We're revealing some of the best election interviews over the past few months because it's important you know the facts and get to the polls. We are talking about Black Voters Matter with LaTosha Brown. Wow.
I mean, it's so much.
You know what I wanted to add? I'm sorry, Lonnie.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what I wanted to add? I've even heard if you registered as a Republican, you have problems voting as a Democrat. Is that true?
You know, that was in the primary. In the primary, you had closed, in many states, you have what is called a closed primary. So if you are registered or with a particular party, well, oftentimes in those primaries, you know, if you are asked what ballot do you want the Republican ballot or the Democratic ballot? But that's in the primary. That usually happens. That happens in the spring. We're headed towards the general election. And so now as we head into the general election, people can actually vote a split ticket. So there's a different kind of, you won't run into that kind of problems. We've heard some people, I've not seen that, quite frankly, I've not actually seen evidence of that happening in some of the states that we're working. But ultimately, I think it is really important for us to understand that it happens in a variety of ways. That when we're looking at the spectrum of voter suppression, it always comes in three ways, y'all. There's always three strategies. One, there's always a strategy to actually weaponize the administrative process. So literally create some kind of barrier that seems like a legitimate thing, right, that in fact make it that much more harder for people to participate in voting. That's like shutting off, like what we're seeing in Georgia, like making making the days short in which you can cast your early ballot, shortening the time, like shortening the time where people can register to vote, just making it that much, making that window much smaller so that people don't have as much access. The second way is it's always literally weaponizing, taking the legal process, right, and weaponizing, and that creates a barrier. That, you know, in the 60s, that may have seemed like, you know, you had to show up at the county office and how many jelly beans are in a jar. Technically, that they had the right to do that because that seemed legal, but just because it was legal didn't mean it was right. Hell, slavery at one point was legal in this country. That didn't mean it was right. And so what you're seeing is you're actually seeing these laws that have been passed, what we feel are voter suppression laws that have been passed all across the country, you know, making it illegal to provide comfort care to folks that are out in line, to give someone food and water in line. Now that's a felony. To help somebody, an elderly person or person who's bedridden, to actually vote in the state of Alabama, now that can be a felony conviction. I mean, I can go on and on and on. So what it does is it creates these legal barriers that seem like they're legitimate, but in fact, they're just created to be just that, a barrier. And the third thing is about creating a culture of fear. And usually that's shrouded with misinformation and disinformation. And so we see that continuously, that ultimately that creating this idea, like when you're seeing on social media, you know, if you go vote, somebody's going to show up, you know, they're going to find your name, like finding a way to actually put so much misinformation and disinformation out there that there's chaos and fear, that people don't know what to do. People are feeling kind of stuck. And so I'm encouraging people, there are a number of things they could do. They can go to our website, blackvotersmatterfund.org, blackvotersmatterfund.org, and they can find out information about this election cycle. They can find out if they want to volunteer, if they're interested in volunteering with us, they can go there and volunteer. You know, the second thing is As I said, if you're not registered, you're not clear your status, check your status. They can actually go to their county. They can go on the site and check with their state or their county. But another easy way is go to one of our partners, vote.org. They can go to vote.org and go to that website and actually discover whether or not their registration is up to speed and information around voting. The third thing is to get engaged. This is an election cycle that is important. It's this all hands on deck. That this really, I want people to recognize that this election is really about our power. This is really around how we're going to combat when people come at our communities, when folks align themselves with white nationalists, when you start seeing racial rhetoric and that becomes normalized, then how do we respond to that? As a community, for me, that if people come at us, then we got to make sure that we respond in kind. That is important for us to actually have a vote that is so overwhelming, that is so large, that it makes it much more difficult to actually steal an election or to try to shift the results or try to challenge the certification of it. And so I think that that's another thing that we've got to do. We need people to volunteer, and then have fun with it. One of the things that I'm excited about on this Harris Walz ticket is that they're bringing joy back into politics.
Right.
Politics is oftentimes is not sexy. Listen, I've been doing this work my whole life. Parts of it are not fun. There are parts that when we collect, it's something about when we collectively move together to actually in a similar direction to send a message or do something or bring something about, there is something that is actually powerful in that. And there's a joy that I'm seeing and experiencing that people are feeling. And so I'm saying have fun with it, y'all. Let's have the joy to bring it back. It is every day, day in and day out. I know folks are tired of politics. Folks are tired of, all the negativity. So this is a moment. This is a moment that not only can we help make history, but this is a moment that literally we can shift kind of the dynamics and say, we're going to have joy with it. That's what we do with Black Voters Matter. If you see what we call the Blackest Bus in America, we always going to have music. We're always going to be celebrating each other and affirming each other because this work is hard and our community is constantly under assault. So what we find ways to how do we bring joy and leverage culture in such a way that we're inspiring our folks, igniting our folks, not for a candidate or for a political party, but really to affirm that we've got power and we fight back.
Well, this is why we love you, LaTosha Brown from Black Voters Matters. This is very important, and you're always giving us the message. Enjoy your time in Chicago and be safe out there. And you are a part of history. We love you, sister.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love y'all, too.
Take care.
All right, Black Voters Matter.
On the way, she's known for putting Donald Trump in his place. White House correspondent April D. Ryan.
Here's your dose of espresso. Strong, hot news now.
This is the Espresso. People have been reaching out saying they're mad that they can't vote because they're felons. Here's an idea. Grab some homies who probably weren't going to vote. Get them to the polls because every vote counts. Meanwhile, Gen Z has been clowning Trump on TikTok.
Things I trust more than Donald Trump.
Nick Cannon pull-out game. Gas station sushi.
A Diddy party, y'all. Baby oil edition.
Food in an Atlanta restaurant when I walk in and I see nothing but grass walls and hookah.
Potato salad with raisins and a 2-day leftover. Not once refrigerated.
Stevie Wonder in the driver's seat.
And while former President Trump threw paper towels to Puerto Ricans after Hurricane Maria, VP Harris actually has a plan for Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico is home to some of the most talented, innovative, and ambitious people in our nation. And Puerto Ricans deserve a president who sees and invests in that strength.
Make sure you vote Tuesday. That's the Espresso.
This is Cafe Mocha. Radio from a woman's perspective.
This is Cafe Mocha with Lonnie Love, Yo-Yo, and Angelique. We're revealing some of the best election interviews over the past few months because it's important you know the facts and get to the polls. We talked to White House correspondent April D. Ryan back in the spring.
Let's start, first of all, with what's happening with the two candidates. I mean,
we've been seeing polar opposites for the last two presidential elections. It's like the moral compass of this country versus you're taking stuff away from me versus we don't want your kind here. That's what it's boiling down to. Us versus them, racism versus the moral compass. And it's just really ridiculous. So this election, with Joe Biden and Donald Trump has pulled out every white nationalist card, every anti-Semitic card. He's pulled out a lot of cards, every anti-black card, even though he's making sneakers so we can buy and, saying that we relate to him because he's indicted. Ugh. People have to understand, no matter what president, historically, we are a community with the highest numbers of negatives in almost every category. And if you sit out, you're more of the problem than you are fixing the problem. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but you got to get in the process to change it. And who's to say, even though you may not like Joe Biden now, who's to say that you can't hold him accountable and let him know what you don't like and you want him to fix? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's when things change.
And here we still have trouble in the United States. People are having a problem with that because they are not embedded in this political realm of things. They don't understand what's going on in the political realm. They are just talking about what they see in front of them.
Yeah, let me tell you this, and that's a very good point. When you have these extreme groups, it's because people don't feel covered by government. When Barack Obama became president of the United States, we had more people running into social media, just happy and engaged in the process because many people felt like they were left out of the process, right? Oh, we got a black man who looks like us. And, one of the things, he was considered a rights president, but one of those things that swept through his presidency was the fact of policing, accountability in policing. Because remember, it started when Skip Gates was profiled early on in his administration. Then our Soror, Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin was killed. And he said he could have been my son. And people were like, what does he mean? What do you think he meant? He's a black boy and that's a black man. And people wanted to make a big deal out about the fact that he said he could have been my son instead of focusing in on the fact that this is the plight of black men and black people in America, right? And it just kept on going. And then the juxtaposition of the first black president, people were so angry. They were like, oh my God, we can't do this. So you get somebody the polar opposite of Donald Trump who covered those people who felt like, they weren't covered. The white male who didn't go to college maybe and who felt that they connected with Trump. But I guarantee you they will not be able to stay whatever he owns. I guarantee you those people, Trump would not want him staying in any of his hotel properties. You know what I'm saying?
If you have any questions about where to vote, go to vote.gov. Vote.gov. Don't let anybody keep you from the polls. Our people have fought too hard to get us here.
Want a little more of our flavor? Stay right there. It's Cafe Mocha.
It's Cafe Mocha's election edition. If for some reason you don't know where to vote or you have some concerns about the ballot, go to vote.gov. Vote.gov. Type in the name of your state and all the information should be right there for you. Make a plan, get out there and vote, and don't let anybody stop you.
Oh, this is my comedy brother right here. You can hear him on the SiriusXM channel, Kevin Hart's channel. Is called Quake's House. He has a new Netflix movie out. He has the top rated Netflix stand-up special this year, and he's my brother. Give it up for my man, Earthquake. What's up, Quake?
Hey, sister girl, feeling good for black women power. I'm down. Kamala Harris for president.
Let's talk about that.
Gotta get that out right. Listen, man, I challenge all black men for once. Can we please stand up for a black woman for once? Period. I mean, nothing. I mean, zero. Listen, zero complaints. I mean, just zero complaints. Just do it.
Let's be real though, Quake, because I'm sure you've seen all the hate on social media, and there's a lot of negativity coming. And I'm surprised that some of it is from black men. I think they're conservative men. Charleston White did a scathing. It was just so disturbing what he said about just a woman and a sister in general. What are your male friends saying about this?
Hey, we me and my friends are we're pro-black women. I mean, one thing I envy about Trump supporters, I want us to support them just like Trump supporters support him, regardless. And to be honest with you, for all black men, we would never be where we at if it wasn't for our women. Our women loved us when the world didn't love us, gave us self-esteem, and allowed us to lead them when we had nothing to lead when the world could. We wouldn't be here without black women. So, to each his own. You're going to come to that conclusion later, when you sit down. But the most beautiful thing ever that was put on this earth is a black woman, and I stand by that. I say that on my show, and I'm telling you, she is the most qualified. She is the best, and we need to support her. And why not her? Why not her? Put the qualification up there. I mean, she's been a district attorney, a state attorney, a senator, and a vice president. Those are her qualifications that she did. We ain't going to talk about her education against a man who never was class president. So what are we talking about here? It's just simple off of it. And it's self-hate. It's easy. I would never understand. And I've been on this earth for 61 years. The hatred that our own men have for our black women, but say they love their mama, say they love their kids, say they love their sisters. But that's somebody else's mama, that's somebody else's sister, that's somebody else's daughter. So it's the hatred is real. I'm going from the rooftop until she get in there. I'm damn sure down with her. And I'm going to be down with her until she get there. And it's a great day. And the haters going to hate because, like I said, nobody rob an empty bank.
Exactly.
Listen, maybe you can't vote because you're a felon or you're not a citizen. That does not mean you can't be a part of the process. Grab your family, your friends, your neighbors, take them to the polls, help the elderly or disabled fill out their ballots. Tuesday is the day. Let's all get together and make some history. Until next time, you can find us on all platforms at Cafe Mocha Radio. Cafe Mocha is a production of Miles Ahead Broadcasting in partnership with Super Radio. Executive producer Sheila Eldridge. For comments, booking, or more information, visit cafemocharadio.com.